friends, and welcome to the School Librarian Learning Network podcast. I'm Steve Tatro, also known as Dr. T Loves Books, and I love talking about all things related to school libraries. This week's episode is a little different. A few years ago, I was lucky enough to host Season 2 of School Library Connection's One Lesson at a Time podcast. I had a great time doing those episodes, where I got to speak with amazing guests sharing wonderful lessons. If you've heard One Lesson at a Time, the format of the usual SLLN episode probably sounds pretty familiar. Heck, some of the guests and their lessons probably sound familiar too. Since SLC is now open to the public, I thought y'all might enjoy hearing some One Lesson at a Time throwback episodes. What you're going to hear here is a rougher version of the episodes, as One Lesson at a Time had a paid support staff making things sound remarkable. But the guests and their lessons are remarkable on their own. I hope you enjoy this throwback episode as much as I enjoyed recording it. As always, the opinions and ideas shared in this podcast by myself and my guests are our own and do not reflect those of our school districts. And because school librarians always strive to be good digital citizens, I cite sources when using material that is not my own. Without further ado, let's get to this week's episode. Welcome everyone, and big welcomes to Casey Boyd, who's going to be here talking about her anti-bullying lesson. I'm very excited. Casey, if you wouldn't mind taking a second to introduce yourself.
Sure. My name is Casey Boyd, and my pronouns are she, her, and hers. I am a middle school librarian, and I currently work for the District of Columbia Public School System, of course, in Washington, D.C. The name of my school is Jefferson Academy. It's located in Southwest D.C.
Now, as I understand it, you didn't start out in D.C., right? You've had quite a journey as a librarian, if I recall.
Actually, you're absolutely correct. I first started working as a school librarian in Chicago, Illinois, and I worked for Chicago Public Schools. Prior to that, I briefly bounced around in a suburban district doing sub work as a librarian, but I don't even count those 2 years as that. My real work came in when I started working for Chicago Public Schools. Did that for a couple of years and then took a management position in libraries with the East St. Louis School District in East St. Louis, Illinois. And then now I am in Washington, D.C., and this is my 5th year.
Outstanding. Wow. You've got so many experiences and such a wide variety of experience. That's got to be really handy.
Yeah, it's interesting because each district they had some things that were similar about them, and then there's a lot of things that are very different. But the most important thing is I've learned something from my experience working in all 3 districts that has carried over, and that's helped me become a stronger librarian.
Now, speaking of being stronger librarians, one of the things that kind of makes the job a little bit easier sometimes is that there are different events that go on in different months. And the lesson you're sharing actually goes with National Bullying Prevention Month. And it's such a great lesson. I'm wondering if you could give us just a little bit of what grade level and subject area would you say that this goes into?
Well, it can be taught with 6th, 7th, and 8th graders from my experience, but then you can also drop it down, I feel, to teach it to our younger students in elementary and, of course, in high school would be really imperative for them to use because I'm a former high school librarian and I see a lot of points that could easily be used in that respect with the kids, but I have been teaching. This will be my 3rd year doing this lesson with my colleagues, and it has really been a great experience doing this, and the kids have gotten a lot out of it. And the staff has really taken note that the lessons have really made an impact with the kids. And, I'm just really pleased that the kids have benefited from it greatly.
And where did this idea come from in the first place? Was there any particular inciting incident or something that made you go, this is something we really need to bring to our students?
Well, the first year we did it, it was, and I keep saying, wait, let me back up. I don't teach this lesson by myself. I teach this lesson with the PE health teacher. Her name is Tori Pierre. And our social worker that's assigned to our school through DBH, which is an agency that's contracted with DC public school systems. And that social worker, she's a clinical social worker, and her name is Lakeisha Tribute. And we're friends in the building and outside the building as well. And I think that particular year we had some incidences that were taking place that it were in person with kids bullying each other, and then it also transferred over into the virtual sense online
Mm.
with the kids. And a lot of the kids we were really close to, and so we were talking about, oh god, this is really bad. This is the beginning of the school year, these kids are already acting like this. And I started doing a little research, and I was like, hey, I didn't realize that October is known as National you know bu- um, Anti-Bullying Prevention Month, for crying out loud.
Yeah, until I saw your lesson, I didn't realize that either. So that's so great.
Exactly. I mean, this will be 24 years. I'm 24 years in as a school librarian. I had no idea that this even existed. So started doing some research, and then the three of us just started talking about how could we present this to the kids, and that's how it got birthed. And ever since then, it's been boom. Every year we've been doing this, and so this will be year 4 that we're going to be doing this.
That's outstanding when you can find that program that just has such an impact that you want to keep bringing it back, and that you've got collaborators too that are really engaged with it as well.
Exactly, exactly. And everyone brings something to the table. My colleagues, they're just dynamic. I love talking about them in their own right. Lakeisha, who is the clinical social worker, she brings the clinical side, of course, to this lesson. And then she also, really enforces how bullying can affect your mental health. And my friend Tori, she really dives deep as a PE health teacher in terms of how bullying can really impact your physical health. And as a school librarian, I talk about how this can affect your schoolwork and how you interact with kids and your friends, whether it be in a face to face situation or either online. So we all bring something very valuable to this lesson to the table, and I'm really pleased that we're given the freedom of our principal to just do this type of lesson.
It's such a great ability to be able to collaborate with the PE teachers too, because I feel like that's an area that sometimes maybe gets left out, but that's such a brilliant connection for this particular unit to bring it in.
It really is. Yeah, it really is.
So, how did you decide on the resources you used to create this lesson?
Well, we all did our share of research, and we took it. We approached it in this respect, is that each one of us are very good in our own particular discipline. And so we have a high trust of each other, and we said, okay, everyone's going to bring something to the table that we're going to use, and it's going to be well researched as well as easy for the kids to follow along, and they will understand, digest it, and they will also enjoy it. So that was the overall goal.
That's such an important element, I think, sometimes that's easy to forget that we've got to make it that the kids are able to easily digest what we're bringing them.
Exactly, exactly. Because we could talk really, really, really high on a particular topic, and we could lose kids within like the first 5 minutes of the lesson. We got to make it fun for them. And I'll give you a good example. Tori is a very energetic PE health teacher. So she's all over the room. She has that energy. And Lakeisha really knows how to keep the kids' attention, and, by driving some specific points to make them really think. I bring kind of the comedy to this whole scenario, and I talk about real life, and I could also bring in real life examples of how kids have been impacted by bullying. And so when you see the lesson, and you'll see that I really, introduce a lot of things that kids can really relate to, like kids their own age, and how they've experienced bullying and how they have dealt with it effectively.
I think that's so great that you've got those authentic moments that you can bring in and make those connections with the kids, because sometimes it's so easy to go over their heads, not just with the language, but even just with the examples.
Yeah, yeah. You have to bring those tangible ideas as well as examples to the table, because I work with middle schoolers, and I'm just going to use them as an example. They have the attention span of a gnat. And so you really have to be very creative to keep their attention and keep them engaged. So you can't lecture to them. You have got to keep it interactive. And that's one of the reasons why we decided to use the interactive tool Nearpod, because that keeps them engaged. And Nearpod, I'm not trying to be a salesperson for Nearpod, but Nearpod has some tools built into it to keep the kids engaged in activities like the whiteboard, the polls, especially the polls. The kids love that because kids this age are very, very much so, opinionated. So polls work out extremely well. The online quizzes just to test their knowledge, and that could be viewed as an exit ticket, if you're a classroom teacher. So they have that embedded in Nearpod, which is pretty cool. But there's other vehicles you can use, like, you know, uh, Flipgrid and Padlet. And so, it goes on and on and on that you can use instead of a Nearpod if you wanted to.
It's great that it's sort of platform agnostic, that you can come up with different ways of approaching it and still get the same results out of it, but you're still using such great personal resources that you're bringing to it, like your own pieces of story that you're able to tell the kids, and bring them those examples to tie it in with all these different technological pieces that are really just there to help move the lesson along. They're not like the point of the lesson. So I really appreciate how you've brought that in too. And you've got some really great tools here too. I see the News Literacy Project listed as one of the tools that you use. Outstanding resource.
Right. It definitely is. I mean, I'll just toot my own horn a little bit. I am a national ambassador for the News Literacy Project, and I represent the DMV area, which is the Washington, D.C., the Maryland, and Virginia area. And the cool thing about the News Literacy Project is that they have um, these classroom, activities already embedded in their site. It's just a matter of you using them. And the cool thing about them is that they look at it as, okay, you don't need this part of the lesson, but if you want to take this chunk of the lesson, you can. You don't have to use their entire lesson. You can take the parts that really make that fit for the lesson that you're trying to teach. And then they have the SIFT, which is their weekly lessons that come out. And it's like very up to date activities that are based off of what's taking place in the news that week. So I liken it to the social media site called Now This, and it's really broken down for fifth grade through 12th graders to understand and enjoy. So, yeah, I use a lot of those resources, that I listed in the lesson plan, because I like to bring a lot of spice and flavor to anything that I do. And yes, I feel that the News Literacy Project's lessons are a foundational tool for this lesson to be as effective as it's been.
And they're free, which is my favorite word when it comes to lessons.
Free is my favorite word too, because these are way too expensive for educators this year, and years going forward, so I really enjoy the freebies that are out there.
Now, you are working on the fourth time you'll be delivering this lesson, you
Mm-hmm.
said, for this year.
Mm-hmm.
Have you made any changes, or have there been any adjustments since you taught it the first time? Are there any lessons you've taken away?
Yeah, there's some things that we've altered. Like, there's an example of a young boy who was bullied online, and I thought, it very well could have stayed in the lesson. I just thought that it would be cool if I updated that particular section, because they made reference to a gaming system that the kids really enjoyed, and I kind of felt that the kids were not as interested in it anymore. So that's why I said I think it might be time for me to find another example. So that's when it's good to make the change.
That's a really great point. Sometimes we forget, like we get so used to I've
Hmm.
been doing this way, but
Yeah.
are there ways we can bring it into the present a little bit more?
Yeah, you have to be very cognizant of that. And that's why before we know we're going to teach this lesson together every year, but we spend about a week just going through the lesson individually and saying, okay, I think I'm going to keep this, I'm going to extract this part. You know what, let me tighten this area up, and then we come back together and we slap another Nearpod together, which is pretty cool.
That's such great advice, going back and everybody in the group kind of taking a piece to look it over.
Hmm.
I
Hmm.
love that. Thank you. Are there any particular supports that have been built in for like special ed or ELL students? Anything along those lines, or is it pretty?
It's built in for the kids, in terms of our kids are mainstreamed. So we will have a number of a variety of learners sitting in front of us. So we have a lot of things that are built in. Like for example, if we have a student that really needs voice to text translation, there is a opportunity for us to use that feature through some additional program that my district purchases, to make that happen to help them out. We do ask that when we teach the lesson that the student's aide that's assigned to them, of course, follows them into this lesson. Oftentimes, because of the staffing, our aides get pulled in a variety of different directions. So I always check in with that student's aides and say, okay, we're teaching this lesson. We really need you to be here to kind of help, little Johnny or little Amy, in the event, that they need some extra supports. When it comes to our ELL teachers, that's where it gets a little more dicey in terms of we have to share the lesson with the ELL teacher because there it just may be that that student who is transferred in may not be ready for the full English version of the lesson, and she will help with the translation. And oftentimes what she'll do is she'll just drop in for those periods, which is a great help. So you'll have 4 to 5 teachers in the classroom. We're very fortunate and blessed in my school that we have these specialists that are with us, but to really make it a dynamic lesson, it just takes a village to do it.
Absolutely. And that's got to be such a great experience for the students to have that many instructors able to sort of work with them, not necessarily one on one, but certainly in smaller groups if they need it.
Yeah,
That's got to be a
yeah.
great support.
And the thing is that when it's well, every lesson is taught, the kids are to be they're supposed to take it seriously. But when they see that there's a lot of extra teachers in the room, a lot of emphasis on it, then they kind of say, okay, this is a pretty serious lesson. And I think I better focus in a little bit. But again, working with middle schoolers, sometimes they zone in and zone out on lessons. So, it's kind of hit or miss. But when they do see this, they're like, okay, this is serious. And this is more of a discussion with this lesson. I didn't, I never, when we first started, bringing it together, pulling it together, we didn't want it to be, okay, teach, 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 assessment, teach, 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 assessment. We wanted the kids to have open dialogue with one another in small groups or whole group setting, and that reinforces the importance of bullying should not be taking place. Period. Within their age group. So that's a really good thing that we have stuck with that I like is that this is a really conversation type of lesson that's being taught.
So that is a great point that leads us into the idea of feedback. Have you heard much from students or other teachers about how this lesson has gone over?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. The kids will come back and they will have short conversations with the three of us at any given time, and they'll talk about, what, my brother was bullied at in high school and this is what happened, or my parents had to get involved. This happened to me, what you were talking about. They didn't want to discuss it in a whole open group setting, but what they did was what they would do is they would come back and they would talk to us individually, privately, about the experience. So yeah, the feedback has been really, really good. In some cases, I've had some kids that have said, you know what, in the class that you were teaching, this particular kid has, bullied another kid, and I didn't like it. And I realized that I was wrong because I didn't say anything. I was a bystander when I should have been a upstander, you know. So that just shows you right there that the lesson really made that impact.
That's so powerful when the kids are able to do that internalizing and really see here's why this is so important. I love that. Wow, that's
Yes,
outstanding.
yes.
What advice do you have for anyone who would like to use this lesson with their students? Is there anything in particular they should go in thinking about or knowing?
Well, you have to know your students very well and what's taking place in the life of the school. I just happen to work at a school where we get a daily bulletin that's written out by my principal and sent to us an email. And that does include a behavioral um, report from the previous day. So if kids got in trouble because they were in the lunchroom acting a fool and doing the nut, and they got in trouble, you will see this kid got in trouble for this, that, and another. Even in the classroom, you hear about all the different detentions, referrals, suspensions, whatever. So being in tune with what's going on behaviorally. The second is on a social level. What are the kids talking about? What are they gossiping about? What's an issue that they're really engaged in and when they're kind of, in discussion? What's that thing that they don't want the adults or the parents to know? That's what you need to know. Okay. So that means that you have to do some ear hustling, ear dripping, everything to figure out what's going on with these kids. And then the third is that talk to other teachers in the building that have a really good relationship with the kids besides yourself. Like I always talk to one of the behavioral techs in the building. They're the assistants to the dean, and they know the kids very well on a social level as well, and they'll tell you about things that are going on sometimes on social media because they do have hidden accounts and they're part of chats and the kids don't even know it, which I
That is clever.
love, which I just love, right? So they know what's going on, and they can tell you, yeah, there's some cyberbullying that's taking place, you know and this situation happened. They can't really go into names, but they can talk about the actual situation, and then that really helps us form our lesson. And so when you ask the question, have you changed the lesson from time to time, that's really important because if they're bickering and fighting on Instagram chat, if they're on live and they're doing like little crazy stuff, then you need to pull that into the lesson. Maybe just a simple sentence. That'll make those little heads pop up and look at you like, whoa, how does she know? You know what I mean? So yeah, you definitely have to engage with other teachers in the building because you think you know everything about what these kids are doing. You start talking to other teachers, you learn a whole lot too.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
We don't get a disciplinary report in my school, but you've got me thinking I need to go talk to my guidance counselors. I need to talk to my assistant principal in charge of discipline and just get those pieces of information that could help me implement this in a way that's going to
Hmm.
really focus on my kids. That's such a great point.
And you know who else knows a lot is the ladies in the main office,
Yes.
because when these kids get in so much trouble and they do have to have a parent conference, the parents will come in and some of them will be mad. They'll say things under their breath, and it doesn't take much for the clerk to piece things together. Oh, this is why this little boy or this little girl was doing this, that, another, whatever. You know, so yes, it does make a difference. And, hone in on these folks that you know. And the last person that's a valuable person that can be very helpful is, of course, your custodians. The custodians are always in the area working, doing their thing, and they overhear what these kids are talking about. And these kids don't think, they're just talking. in front of an adult. Now, and then they don't realize the custodian hears everything. And so I'm at my circulation desk, and one of the custodians in the building will walk past and say, hey, the kids were talking about this, and this. I'm like, thank you. That helps out so much.
That is such a great piece of advice. I never would have thought to go to the custodial staff, but they literally have their ear to the ground in some
They
places.
surely do. Yes, they
Wow.
do.
Casey, thank you so much for sharing not just this lesson, but for all these great pieces of advice that you've got for how we can collaborate better too. This is just outstanding. I'm really looking forward to trying this out in October when we get to National Bullying Prevention Month.
Yeah, but most importantly is that at the end of the day, the parents will appreciate you doing this lesson, especially when it comes to the cyberbullying side of the lesson, because a lot of our parents are struggling with this.
Yeah.
The parents are oftentimes for middle schoolers are shocked that their child has a Facebook and an Instagram account, but then they
Hmm.
learn later that this kid has like multiple accounts, and so they're struggling, and by us just teaching these simple lessons, it does make a difference, and we're helping the parents out on many levels.
That's a great point too. I wonder if this could even be expanded in some way into sort of a parent presentation at some point to just let them know here's some things you might want to think about.
It very well could. It could be something that could be shared with the PTO. And I'm kind of thinking out loud. We've never shared this out with the PTO, um, in that respect. But now I'm thinking about it. Maybe this might be a goal for us for this upcoming year. So thank you for helping me brainstorm that idea, because I never thought
We're better
about it.
together.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, thank you so much. How can listeners connect with you in the future? Because you are always sharing lots of great stuff. So, how should they come and find you?
Well, it's really simple. If you can find me on every platform at Boss Librarian, Boss_Librarian. And from there, you can follow me. But I'm going to tell you right now, in the times that we're living in, it is to your advantage to make sure that you have a very detailed bio line on your social media account. Because if I can't tell if you're a librarian or an educator or a lover of books, I'm not gonna let you on my platform, because
Yeah.
it's a little crazy right now, and I need peace and quiet when I'm on social media.
Well, that is a great piece of advice, too. Just a font of wisdom. You have had nothing but great piece of advice for us today. I really appreciate you coming. Thank you so much for sharing, and looking forward to getting into this lesson.
Okay, great. And please reach out. Any of you that decide to use the lesson, please reach out, because we would love to hear how your lesson was facilitated, how it worked for you, in your school. And I would definitely share it with my colleagues.
You heard the lady. Make sure you're giving her some feedback. Thanks again, Casey.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the SLLN podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for the episode. They feature links to the resources shared by our guest, as well as ways to keep in touch with them, and links to the book break recommendations. And stop by the SLLN website, home to a curated list of free upcoming virtual events and resources for school librarians. It's easy to become a member of the School Librarian Learning Network. Just visit the site and use what you like. If you have a comment, an idea, a question, or something you want to share, you can email schoolliblearning@gmail.com. That's schoolliblearning@gmail.com. Know a school librarian with something others could learn from? Let us know. Until next time, be good, be safe, and be well.